This is AUGforums.com Real Talk, an unfiltered, independent perspective on Acumatica Cloud ERP. My name is Tim Rodman, and I want to mention 3 things in this pre-recorded intro before we get started. First, thank you to our sponsors. Our first sponsor is Paya. Paya offers Acumatica users a suite of industry-leading payment orchestration tools. Far beyond native Acumatica payments, Paya enables EMV, NFC terminals for counter sale. They offer a frictionless customer portal through their click-to-pay solution, and they support most e-commerce platforms and point-of-sale solutions used with Acumatica, such as One Retail and AcuPOS. And best of all, omni-channel reconciliation is available for all of their solutions. Our second sponsor is DataSelf. DataSelf Analytics is a revolutionary reporting solution that enables organizations to make the most informed decisions faster and easier than ever. It uniquely simplifies business intelligence, empowers anyone to build and access dashboards, and delivers critical business insight when and where you need it. Our third sponsor is 24/7 Digitize. 24/7 Digitize is an Acumatica bookkeeping service provider that helps derive the best value from your Acumatica investment by maintaining your books utilizing Acumatica's best practices and guidelines. Please take a minute to support this podcast by clicking each one of the sponsor banners located at augforums.com/sponsors. Our sponsors track clicks, and every click helps to support this podcast. The second thing I'd like to mention is that I'm always looking for victims. Guests. If you use Acumatica in any capacity, no matter how small, I'd love to talk with you. Check out augforums.com/podcast and click the link near the top of the page to learn more about being a guest on the podcast. Third and finally, I'd love to see you listed on my Rolodex. Check out augforums.com/Rolodex to find out who else is using Acumatica and read the instructions at the top to see how you can add yourself to the list. All right, that's it for the pre-recorded intro. Let's get started. Today is Thursday, August 4th, 2022, and this is episode number 91, day 613 of Independent Acumatica Consulting. This is a follow-up to episode number 33, day 1 of Independent Acumatica Consulting, back on November 30th, 2020. I've been doing independent consulting for almost 2 years now. Wow, time flies. And this school year, I've decided to make a change to the way that I schedule my work. Why school year? I know, even though I haven't been in school for a very long time, I still think in school years rather than in calendar years. Also, since I started independent consulting back in the fall of 2020, counting years is the same thing as counting school years. So for the rest of this podcast episode, every time you hear the word year, I actually mean school year. Last year was my first year doing independent consulting full-time. For the first year, I was part-time as I was helping my kids with their online school during the pandemic. So even though I've been doing independent consulting for almost 2 years, I only have 1 year of full-time experience to reflect on. This summer, I reflected on how things went this past year, and I came up with 3 main points. Point number 1. This past year, I continued to do everything on a prepaid hourly basis. I really like doing things this way because I don't have to deal with the overhead of invoicing and chasing down unpaid bills. Also, clients get to make all of their payments with a credit card, and so far, everyone has been happy to pay with credit card. As far as consuming hours goes, I've received a lot of positive feedback about the My Sherpa portal, where I document my work, including the number of hours consumed by task and by day, screenshots, write-ups, and screen recordings of any meetings that we have. All of this has worked out really well, so I plan to continue doing things on a prepaid hourly basis this next year. Point number 2. I continue to enjoy focusing on reporting in Acumatica. Many people might have become bored by now with such a narrow focus, but I must really like reporting because I still really enjoy focusing on reporting in Acumatica. So no changes there either. Point number 3. This is where I'm going to make a change. This past year, I scheduled all meetings using my Calendly link. This was nice because Calendly automatically sends meeting invites with Zoom links, which made scheduling easy from a technical standpoint. But from a workflow standpoint, it was challenging because I wound up with too many clients that wanted to do recurring work. So for this next school year, I've decided to schedule days instead of hours. This will favor clients who want more than just a random 1-hour phone call every now and then. I keep one day each week reserved for overhead tasks and working on my online video training course. That leaves 4 days per week available for consulting work. In order to schedule a day, I'll now be requiring a minimum commitment of 4 hours. I'll still be charging on an hourly basis like I've been doing, but the minimum commitment for a day is now 4 hours. If you don't have enough work for 4 hours on a day, I can still work on something for you, but I'll need to charge a minimum of 4 hours. So let's say I work on something for you and it only takes me 2 hours, and you don't have anything else for me to work on that day. Even though I only work 2 hours, I'll need to charge 4 hours. On a day, I'll have capacity for 4 to 6 hours of billable work. So if I work less than 4 hours on a day, I'll charge 4 hours. If I work 4 hours on a day, I'll charge 4 hours. If I work 5 hours on a day, I'll charge 5 hours. And if I work 6 hours on a day, I'll charge 6 hours. So I'm charging by the hour, but requiring a minimum of 4 hours per day. Since I'm in Ohio on Eastern Time in the United States, I'm going to kick off each consulting day with a Zoom call between 3 p.m. and 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Hopefully that's a good window of time for people in the United States, since the other U.S. time zones are all behind Eastern Time. That will allow us to work on something together on the Zoom call and allow you to outline other things for me to work on the following day. Then I'll work on your stuff the following day until my next Zoom call between 3 p.m. and 5 p.m. Eastern Time the next day. Our Zoom call counts toward the 4-hour minimum since it's within the 24-hour period that I consider to be a day. All right. Hopefully that makes sense, and hopefully this change will work for you. Since I'm now scheduling days instead of hours, I'm not going to rely on Calendly as heavily as I did in the past. My availability will be listed at augforums.com/availability, and you can email me if you'd like to book a day with the 4-hour minimum that we discussed earlier. Selfishly, I'd like to be able to book myself for this entire upcoming year, but I realize that's not practical because there is no way that you'd want to schedule a day with me 4 months from now or 8 months from now. So augforums.com/availability will only show probably something like the next 4 upcoming weeks. I'm going to prioritize clients who want to commit to recurring days, something like 2 days a week, 1 day a week, 1 day every other week. But the minimum requirement is just 1 day with a minimum of 4 hours on that day. I want to point out that I do understand that you don't really care about hours. You want tasks to get done. You aren't buying hours, you are buying results. You want to know how much it will cost to create that report or that dashboard. But I find that reporting is always a back and forth process. In my experience, when it comes to reporting, it doesn't work well to take requirements, give an estimate, get the estimate approved, go into a dark cave for a while, then emerge with the quote finished product. Once you see the quote finished product, 95% of the time, you'll want me to make changes to it once you see what it looks like with actual numbers. That's normal because that's the nature of reporting. Because of the back and forth nature of reporting, I don't like to spend more than a handful of hours working on something independently before showing you my progress, because I know that showing you my progress will likely alter what you'd like me to do as next steps. So that's another reason why I'm moving to days rather than hours. For recurring work, we can use the Zoom call at the beginning of the day between 3 p.m. and 5 p.m. to recap what I've completed so far. Then you give me a potentially modified list of priorities that you want me to work on for the rest of the 24-hour period. I'm also making this change based on my experience working with clients full-time this past year, and I have some data to back this up. I worked with 63 total clients this past year. That's 63 different companies that use Acumatica. But I only did more than 10 hours of work for 17 of those clients. This is interesting to me for 2 reasons. First, when I look at the list of clients that I did less than 10 hours of work for, I don't think that I had a measurable impact on their business. I created a report, provided some training, etc., but I wasn't able to have a measurable impact on their business in such a short amount of time. When I look at the first client that I did more than 10 hours of work for, that just happens to be the first client where I think that I was able to have a measurable impact on that client's business. That client was also a client that I work with on a recurring basis. The second reason why this is interesting to me is that 17 divided by 63 equals about 27%, which is not too far off from 20%. This is always fascinating to me because of something called the Pareto principle, which is also known as the 80-20 rule. The 80-20 rule says that roughly 80% of consequences come from 20% of causes. When applied to businesses, it says that typically 80% of sales come from 20% of clients. Applying this to the list of 17 clients that I feel I had a measurable impact on their business, that's about 20% of my client list. It's always interesting to see the Pareto principle appear in the real world. So by scheduling days rather than hours this next year, I'll be working with less total clients, but a greater percentage of my time will have a measurable impact on clients' businesses. Also, I'm hoping that this change will lead to more recurring work. As I look at the list of 17 clients that I did more than 10 hours of work with this past year, most of them work with me on a recurring basis, once a week, once every couple of weeks, etc. Even though my minimum is only 4 hours on a day, I'm hoping that most clients will want to work with me on a recurring number of days every month. In order to encourage recurring work, I'm going to prioritize clients who commit to recurring days every month. You won't lose your recurring slot as long as you stay committed to it, and I'll find a way to keep your slot booked on the augforums.com/availability page until you no longer need it. The last point I'd like to make is about when this will start. There are still a number of clients that have prepaid hours, and they are used to working with me on an hourly basis. So I want to give those clients time to use their hours on an hourly basis. For that reason, I'm looking to start this new method of scheduling days rather than hours on November 1st, 2022. That gives existing clients a few months to adjust. I'm sure that there are things that I haven't thought of yet. If you have questions about any of this, please feel free to send me an email. And thank you to all 63 of you clients that I work with this past year. I look forward to continuing to work with many of you this coming year and beyond. All right, well, that's it for now. We'll catch you on the next episode of augforums.com Real Talk. Thanks for listening, and take care.